she said. "I'm not like other women," the cowboy said. "That's why I want you." Ella had always felt like she didn't quite belong anywhere. She wasn't mean or rude, but she had a fire inside her that made her different from the women she had known in her old life. Most of them seemed content to follow the rules, to settle in one place, to marry, to have children, and to live by routines that felt like cages. Ella didn't want that. She wanted freedom. She wanted the kind of life where the wind could brush against her face without anyone asking her to sit still. So when she arrived in the small western town of Willow Creek, she felt a spark of hope. It was nothing like the city she had left behind. The noise, the endless crowds, the sense that she had to hide parts of herself to fit in. Willow Creek was quiet, dusty, and simple. People rode horses along the streets, waved at neighbors from their porches, and seemed to notice small details about each other. It was a town that valued honesty and hard work over pretense, and for the first time in years, Ella felt like she could breathe. She found a small cabin at the edge of town, just past the rolling hills that led to the open plains. The cabin was old, with wooden beams that creaked when the wind blew, but it had charm. The porch overlooked a field where wildflowers grew freely, untouched by anyone. Ella felt at home immediately. She unpacked her few belongings, arranging them with care. Everything she owned mattered to her because she had learned to live with just what she needed. She didn't need luxury. She needed space, freedom, and a place where her voice wouldn't be drowned out by other people's expectations. On her second day in town, she decided to explore. Willow Creek had a small market, a bakery, a general store, and a few other shops. Ella loved the way the town smelled of fresh bread, hay, and sunlight. She walked slowly, enjoying the way her boots crunched on the gravel streets. People waved politely, some stopping to chat briefly. She smiled in return, but she kept a little distance. She didn't want to get too close too soon. Trust was something she had learned to give cautiously. It was at the market that she saw him for the first time. Jack was leaning against the counter at the butcher's, examining a small piece of rope in his hands. He had the look of someone who had worked outdoors his whole life. Sun-kissed skin, hands rough from labor, eyes that seemed calm but sharp at the same time. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, with boots that looked worn but well cared for. There was something steady about him, a presence that made the room feel grounded, even though he said nothing. Ella, being who she was, couldn't help but notice him. She had always been drawn to people who seemed different, who had a depth she could sense but couldn't immediately define. Something about Jack made her curious. She moved closer to the counter, pretending to look at some fresh apples, and watched him quietly. He noticed her after a few moments. Their eyes met briefly, and instead of the usual polite nod or small smile, he gave her a look that felt like recognition. Like he saw her, not just the face, but the person behind it.
Ella felt a strange flutter in her chest.
She had spent years avoiding attention, protecting herself from people who didn't understand her, yet here was someone who seemed to welcome her difference rather than challenge it. She straightened her posture and, with a teasing tone, said, "I'm not like other women, you know." Jack raised an eyebrow but didn't laugh or dismiss her. He simply leaned slightly on the counter and said, "That's why I want you." She wasn't used to anyone saying anything like that. Most people either ignored her, judged her, or tried to change her. Jack's response was different. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was calm, honest, and somehow comforting. Ella didn't know what to say at first. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from the realization that someone actually saw her, as she truly was. Over the next few days, Ella found herself running into Jack in small ways. Sometimes at the market, sometimes on the dusty trail that led to the edge of town, and sometimes at the local diner where she went to get her morning coffee. Each encounter was brief, but each left an impression. Jack didn't try to overwhelm her or push her into conversation. He simply acknowledged her presence with small gestures, a nod, a smile, or a question about how her day was going. It was subtle, but for Ella, it was revolutionary. She had never met someone who made her feel safe while still respecting her freedom. One afternoon, as she walked through the fields behind her cabin, she noticed Jack fixing a fence for a neighbor. The sun was warm, the air smelled of wild grass, and the sky was a vast, endless blue. Ella paused to watch him work. There was a rhythm to his movements, a careful balance between strength and gentleness. He hammered the posts in with precision, tied the ropes securely, and adjusted the wire with a practiced hand. It wasn't just the physical work that impressed her, it was the attention he paid to the task, the way he seemed fully present in every action. Jack looked up and noticed her standing at the edge of the field. "Hey!" he called, his voice calm but friendly. "You're early today." Ella smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I like walking while it's quiet," she said. "The world feels different here. Slower, maybe." "Easier to breathe." Jack nodded, leaning on his fence post. "It's the kind of place where you notice small things. People, nature, life. Most folks don't take the time, but you seem to." The words felt genuine, and Ella felt a warmth spread through her. Most people didn't really notice. They only saw what they expected to see. Jack's attention was different. It wasn't intrusive. It wasn't judgmental. It was quiet, thoughtful, and attentive. For the first time in a long while, Ella felt like she might be able to let someone in. Not completely, not immediately, but enough to see that connection could be real. And yet she reminded herself she had been hurt before. People who seemed kind and understanding often turned out to be controlling or dismissive once they got close. She couldn't let herself be naive again. She had to be careful. But there was something about Jack that made her question even that caution. He didn't ask her to change. He didn't try to control her or make her fit into anyone else's mold. He simply existed, steady and calm, a presence that somehow made the wildness inside her feel understood rather than dangerous. And that was rare. That was special. Days turned into weeks, and Ella began to feel a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the kind of belonging that demanded conformity or sacrifice. It was simple, genuine, and quietly powerful. She still went on walks alone, still enjoyed the solitude of her cabin, but the knowledge that someone like Jack existed in the same town gave her a feeling of comfort she hadn't expected. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Jack invited her to ride with him to check on the horses at his ranch. Ella hesitated. She wasn't used to being part of someone else's world, but she agreed. There was an unspoken understanding between them. No pressure, no expectation, just the freedom to share time together. The ride was slow and calm, with the horses trotting along the dusty paths. They didn't talk much at first, letting the sounds of the wind and the rustling grass fill the silence. Then Jack spoke softly. "You really aren't like other women, are you?" Ella laughed lightly, shaking her head. "No. I've never fit in anywhere, really. And I don't plan to start now." "Good. That's why I like you. You don't try to be something you're not. You're real." And that's rare. Ella felt her chest swell with a mix of surprise and relief. Most people wanted her to be different. Most people couldn't handle her honesty, her independence, her fire. But Jack could. As the sun set behind them, casting long shadows across the plains, Ella realized that this small western town, with its open skies, honest people, and quiet moments, might just be the place where she could finally belong. Not by changing herself, but by being fully who she was. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, Jack could be part of that life too. Days passed and Ella found herself settling into a rhythm she hadn't known she needed. She spent mornings walking through the open fields, afternoons exploring the town, and evenings sitting on her cabin porch, watching the sky change colors as the sun disappeared behind the hills. The quiet life of Willow Creek was different from anything she had experienced before. Here, the air felt lighter, and even her thoughts seemed to have room to breathe. Jack, meanwhile, became a familiar presence in her life. Not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that quietly mattered. Sometimes he would appear while she was buying bread at the market, or fixing a fence post near her cabin, or even just walking through the fields. He was patient, never rushing her, never forcing conversation. and that was part of what drew her closer to him. One afternoon, Ella was carrying a basket of fresh vegetables back from the market when she noticed Jack helping an elderly neighbor carry hay into her barn. The neighbor, Mrs. Lawson, was small but strong, with a sharp wit and a gentle smile. Jack's movements were careful and deliberate, ensuring that the hay didn't fall and that Mrs. Lawson didn't strain herself. Ella paused for a moment, watching him. He had a quiet strength that didn't demand attention, but when you noticed it, it was impossible to ignore. "Need a hand?" Ella called out, dropping her basket to the ground.
Jack looked up and smiled. "I think we're good, but thank you."
"You're kind to offer." Ella stepped closer anyway, helping Mrs. Lawson adjust a loose rope holding the hay in place. As they worked together, she felt a warmth spread through her chest, not from physical effort, but from being part of a small, simple moment that felt meaningful. Jack glanced at her occasionally, offering quiet encouragement with a nod or a smile. After finishing, Mrs. Lawson thanked them both and sent them on their way with a basket of apples as a reward. Ella accepted it with a grin, savoring the sweet taste of kindness and community. As she walked back to her cabin with Jack beside her, she realized that life here wasn't just slower, it was richer in ways she hadn't experienced before. The people noticed each other, helped each other, and valued honesty over appearances. And Jack, she thought, fit perfectly into that world. As the days went by, their connection grew quietly but steadily. Ella began to open up in small ways, sharing stories from her past, childhood memories of running through cornfields, lessons learned from her parents, dreams she had kept secret for fear of judgment. Jack listened without interruption, never rushing her or giving unwanted advice. He shared his own stories, too. Tales of growing up on the ranch, working long days under the sun, learning to care for the land and the animals with patience and respect. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of purple, they sat on a fallen log near the edge of the woods, watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance. Ella spoke softly. "I've never felt like I fit in anywhere until now."
"I didn't think a small town like this could feel like home, but it does. Maybe because it's real, not forced."
Jack nodded, his gaze steady on the horizon. "Home isn't just a place. Sometimes it's people, and sometimes it's the feeling that you're accepted, exactly as you are." Ella looked at him, a small smile forming. "You really think that—" "About me? I do," he said simply. "You don't try to be someone you're not. You're honest, brave, and kind, and that's rare. That's why I like you." Her heart warmed at his words. For so long, she had hidden parts of herself to avoid judgment or rejection. But with Jack, there was no need. She could be herself, bold, curious, a little wild, and he still saw her as someone worth knowing. One Saturday morning, Jack invited Ella to the ranch to help with some chores. She hesitated, unsure of what to expect, but curiosity won. When she arrived, she was greeted by the smell of hay, leather, and warm earth. Horses nickered softly as they approached the fence, curious about the newcomer. Ella had ridden horses before, but only occasionally. The thought of working alongside Jack, helping with the animals, both excited and intimidated her. Jack handed her a pair of gloves and showed her how to groom one of the horses, explaining each step patiently. "It's all about patience," he said. "You can't rush it. The horse will let you know if you're gentle and careful, or if you're forcing it." Ella laughed softly, running her hands over the horse's mane.
I think we'll get along.
"I don't like being forced either." They spent the morning feeding the animals, repairing fences, and stacking hay bales. Ella discovered a rhythm to the work, a flow that was satisfying in a way she hadn't expected. Jack's presence was steady, never intrusive, offering guidance when needed but allowing her the space to learn and explore. By midday, they took a break under the shade of a large oak tree. Jack pulled out a thermos of iced tea and 2 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. "Nothing fancy," he said, "but it'll keep us going." Ella smiled, taking a bite of her sandwich. "It's perfect. Simple, honest, like everything else here." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of the ranch. The clatter of hooves, the lowing of cattle, the rustle of leaves in the wind. It was peaceful, grounding, and for the first time in a long time, Ella felt completely at ease. After lunch, Jack suggested they take a ride to check on a distant pasture. Ella hesitated, feeling a flicker of fear, but Jack's calm presence reassured her.
Don't worry, I've got you, he said.
As they rode through the rolling hills, the wind in their hair and the sun warming their backs, Ella felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known she missed. Riding alongside Jack, she realized that trust was building between them. Not forced, not rushed, but growing naturally through shared experience, patience, and respect. Over the next few weeks, Ella and Jack spent more time together, exploring the town, riding horses, helping neighbors, and sharing quiet evenings by the fire. Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but through simple, meaningful moments that revealed who they truly were.
Ella began to see that relationships didn't have to be controlling or limiting. They could be supportive, freeing, and honest. One evening, while sitting on the porch of her cabin, Ella reflected on her journey so far.
She had come to Willow Creek seeking freedom, a place where she could be herself, and she had found more than that. She had found a community, a rhythm of life that suited her, and someone who appreciated her for exactly who she was. Jack approached her quietly, holding 2 mugs of steaming cocoa. "Thought you might like this," he said, handing one to her. "Thanks," she replied, smiling. "You always seem to know what I need before I do." "I guess I'm just paying attention." They sipped their cocoa in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken and the stars begin to twinkle above. Ella felt a deep sense of peace and contentment, realizing that she had finally found a place where she could belong, not by changing herself, but by embracing who she was. That night, as she lay in her cabin, Ella thought about Jack and the small moments they had shared. She realized that trust was not about rushing into something or expecting someone to change. It was about patience, respect, and understanding. Jack had shown her that love could be quiet, steady, and supportive. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that a life with him was not only possible, but beautiful. The days that followed were filled with small joys: morning walks through the fields, helping at the ranch, visits to the market, and evenings spent under the stars. Ella discovered that happiness wasn't always about big adventures or dramatic moments. It was in the quiet, steady presence of someone who saw her, understood her, and valued her for exactly who she was. As spring turned into summer, Ella and Jack's bond continued to grow. They laughed together, shared stories, and faced small challenges side by side. And through it all, Ella realized that the connection they had was rare and precious.
It wasn't about changing each other. It was about appreciating and supporting the differences that made them who they were.
By the end of part 2, Ella had not only found a sense of belonging in Willow Creek, but had also discovered the beginnings of a deep, meaningful relationship built on trust, patience, and understanding. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face them with someone by her side who truly saw her, not as someone to be molded, but as someone to be cherished. Ella had been in Willow Creek for several months now, and life felt comfortable, almost predictable, but in a good way. She enjoyed her mornings walking through the fields, afternoons helping Jack on the ranch, and evenings watching the sun dip below the hills. She had never imagined feeling this at peace in a place so small. Yet, life, as she knew, could not always remain quiet. It started with subtle signs, small whispers in town, curious looks when she walked past certain neighbors, and offhand comments that reminded her she was different. Most people meant no harm, but their curiosity often carried judgment. "Ella's an interesting one," someone would say, not like most women here. At first, she brushed it off, knowing she was proud of her independence. But over time, the attention began to feel heavier. Jack noticed her growing tension one evening while they were repairing a fence on the far side of the ranch. Ella's hands trembled slightly as she tied the rope, and her jaw was tight. "You're quiet today," Jack said gently. "Something on your mind?" Ella hesitated, unsure whether to share. She was used to carrying her worries alone. But she trusted Jack, and the words spilled out before she could stop them.
People! They talk!
About me. I know they don't mean harm, but it makes me feel different. Like I'll never fully belong here. Jack set down his tools and moved closer, his eyes calm and steady. Ella, you're different. But that's not a bad thing. You're brave, honest, and kind. That's why you belong here. And it's why I want you in my life. The town might whisper, but that doesn't define you.
His words comforted her, yet they could not erase the unease entirely.
Over the next few days, Ella noticed more things. A neighbor staring when she helped Jack with chores, a small group laughing quietly in the market, and even subtle shifts in the way shopkeepers greeted her. She began to wonder if she would ever be fully accepted. The real test came during the Willow Creek Harvest Festival, an annual event that drew the entire town together. Ella had been looking forward to it, a chance to enjoy music, food, and community, but now anxiety shadowed her excitement. Jack, sensing her hesitation, tried to reassure her. "Just go and enjoy it," he said.
We'll stick together. You don't have to impress anyone.
"You're just you, and that's enough." Ella nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'll try." The festival was lively, with children running between stalls, families laughing over shared meals, and musicians playing cheerful tunes on the bandstand. Ella found herself relaxing slightly as she followed Jack through the crowd. He pointed out friends, introduced her to neighbors, and made her feel included without pushing her into attention. But not everyone was welcoming. A group of women known for being critical of newcomers whispered as Ella passed. One of them, a tall woman with sharp eyes, made a comment loud enough for Ella to hear. "She thinks she's so special, not like other women indeed." Ella's stomach tightened. She had heard such remarks before, but hearing them directed at her during the festival stung more sharply. Jack noticed her stiffening and took her hand gently. "Ignore them," he said. "They don't define you."
I know, Ella whispered, trying to steady her voice. It's just...
Hard sometimes. As the evening went on, she found herself pulling back, hesitant to join in games or dance with the music. She felt like an outsider, despite Jack's constant presence beside her. When it was time for the lantern release, a tradition where townspeople set floating lanterns into the sky, Ella hesitated again. She had always loved the idea of lanterns, the hope they symbolized, but tonight she felt heavy, disconnected. Jack knelt beside her, holding a lantern.
Come on, let's do this together.
You can release it, and we'll watch it rise.
Ella finally agreed, lighting the lantern carefully.
As she watched it drift into the night sky, she felt a mix of relief and sadness. The beauty of the lanterns reminded her that life could be simple and magical, but her place in it was still uncertain. The following days were quieter, but tension lingered. Ella withdrew into her routines, working on her cabin, walking through the fields, and keeping her conversations with Jack short. He didn't pressure her, but gave her the space she needed, waiting patiently for her to feel ready to share again. It was during one of these quiet mornings that the first real challenge between them arose. Jack invited her to help him mend a section of fencing farther from the ranch, and Ella agreed, hoping the physical work and fresh air might lift her spirits. Halfway through the task, a sudden argument erupted with one of Jack's ranch hands over misplaced tools. The raised voices startled Ella, and she felt an unexpected wave of anxiety. Jack's calm demeanor wavered slightly as he tried to mediate. Ella, unused to conflict, became tense and anxious. "I can't do this," she muttered, stepping back.
It's too much. I'll just leave.
Jack paused, looking at her with concern. Ella, wait.
You don't have to leave. Stay if you want. We can handle this together.
But Ella, feeling overwhelmed, walked back toward the cabin. Her chest tightened, and she wondered if she was truly meant to be part of this life. The independence she cherished so much suddenly felt like isolation. She had always been self-reliant, but in this moment, she realized she longed for support without losing herself. That evening, Jack arrived at her cabin with a lantern in hand, a quiet determination in his steps. He knocked softly, and when Ella opened the door, he smiled gently. "I'm sorry about today," he said. I didn't mean to overwhelm you. I just wanted you to be part of it, part of my world. Ella shook her head, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness.
I know you mean well, Jack.
I'm not used to this. I'm not used to someone being so patient, so kind, and present. It scares me. Jack stepped closer. It's okay to be scared. You don't have to have all the answers right now. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. The honesty in his voice touched Ella deeply. She realized that relationships required trust, patience, and vulnerability, and that letting someone in didn't have to mean losing herself. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean on Jack, even if just a little. Yet, life had another test in store. A misunderstanding arose when a letter from Ella's past arrived in town. A former friend, unaware of her new life, sent a message questioning her decisions and hinting at past mistakes. Ella felt a rush of fear and shame as she read it. She didn't want to reveal this part of her history to Jack, fearing he might see her differently. But secrets, she realized, could not stay hidden forever. One evening, she handed the letter to him, her hands trembling. I didn't want to bring this into our life, she said softly. But I can't keep it from you. Jack read the letter carefully, then looked at her with calm eyes. Ella, this doesn't change who you are now. Everyone has a past. What matters is the person you choose to be today. And I see the woman I care about. Honest, brave, and kind. Nothing in this letter changes that. Tears welled in Ella's eyes. She had feared judgment, rejection, and disappointment. Instead, she found understanding and acceptance. For the first time in a long while, she realized that love could be patient, forgiving, and unwavering. The challenges didn't end there, though. Another obstacle came when a sudden storm hit the town, flooding the fields and threatening the animals. Jack worked tirelessly to secure the ranch, and Ella insisted on helping despite the danger. The rain poured, the wind howled, and mud soaked their boots. Yet, side by side, they managed to protect the animals and repair damage as best they could. By the time the storm passed, Ella and Jack were exhausted but exhilarated. The experience had tested their patience, courage, and teamwork, and it had strengthened their bond in ways words could not describe. They realized that life together would not always be easy, but facing challenges together made them stronger. After the storm, they sat on the porch of the cabin, sipping warm tea, their clothes muddy and their hair damp. Ella leaned her head on Jack's shoulder, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She had faced fear, judgment, misunderstanding, and nature's fury, yet she had come through it with someone who truly cared. Life isn't always simple, Jack said softly, but it's worth it when you have someone by your side.
Ella nodded, feeling her heart swell.
She had learned that trust, patience, and honesty were the pillars of any meaningful connection, and with Jack, she had found all three. As night fell and the stars filled the sky, Ella understood that challenges would continue, but they were no longer daunting. Together, they could face anything. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly ready to embrace a life where love, respect, and individuality coexisted. The storm had passed, leaving Willow Creek glistening under the soft morning sun. The fields were wet, the mud slowly drying, and the animals had been cared for. Life on the ranch had returned to its quiet rhythm, but Ella felt that things had shifted in a way she hadn't expected. The past weeks of challenges, social judgment, misunderstandings, and the storm had shown her something important. Strength, patience, and love could grow in the most difficult moments. Ella stepped out of her cabin that morning, inhaling the crisp air. The fields shimmered with dew and birds chirped as if celebrating a new day. She noticed Jack working near the barn, his hands moving steadily as he repaired a broken gate. His focus and calm presence brought a sense of peace she had come to rely on. Jack noticed her approach and waved. "Morning, Ella. Sleep well?" "I did," she replied with a smile, walking toward him. "The storm made me realize how much I appreciate this life. And you." Jack set down his tools and came closer. "I'm glad to hear that.
You've been through a lot recently, and I know it hasn't been easy.
Ella nodded, her gaze falling to the ground.
No, it hasn't. But I've also learned a lot.
About myself, about trust, about what it means to let someone in without losing yourself. And you.
You've shown me that love doesn't have to change who I am. It can fit right alongside who I want to be.
Jack smiled, a gentle warmth in his eyes.
Ella, I don't want you to be anyone but yourself. That's all I've ever wanted. And I see you exactly as you are.
That's enough for me. They spent the morning together, checking the animals, fixing fences, and repairing small damages left by the storm.
Every movement, every shared task felt natural and easy.
Ella realized that true connection wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic events. It was about partnership, respect, and the simple act of being present for each other. As afternoon approached, Jack suggested a break. He led her to a small hill overlooking the town. From there they could see the rooftops, the winding streets, and the distant hills that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The sight filled Ella with a sense of calm and belonging she had never known before.
You know, Jack said softly, life in Willow Creek isn't perfect. There will be challenges, obstacles, and moments that test us. But that's part of what makes it beautiful.
We get to face it together. Ella leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his shoulder.
I understand that now. I used to be afraid of challenges because I faced them alone. But with you, it feels different.
I feel stronger. Their moment of quiet reflection was interrupted by a neighbor approaching, Mrs. Lawson carrying a basket of fresh vegetables and bread. She smiled warmly at Ella.
I just wanted to say thank you, seeing how you helped during the storm, how you stayed calm and kind. It's made many of us see you differently. You belong here, Ella, just as much as anyone else.
Ella felt a wave of relief and happiness. The whispers and judgment she had feared were fading. She realized that true belonging didn't come from forcing people to accept her. It came from living authentically, with patience and kindness, until others recognized her for who she truly was. As the day progressed, Ella and Jack returned to the ranch, where they continued their work side by side. The rhythm of their partnership felt effortless. They shared small laughs, helped each other lift heavy loads, and took breaks to enjoy the simple pleasures of life: warm drinks, shared meals, and quiet conversation. Every moment strengthened their bond, building a foundation of trust and understanding that neither had experienced before. That evening, Jack suggested they take a ride to a nearby meadow to watch the sunset. Ella agreed, feeling a sense of excitement mixed with contentment. As they rode, the wind in their hair and the soft sound of hooves against the ground created a feeling of freedom and peace. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and gold. Ella couldn't remember the last time she had felt such a perfect moment of serenity. They stopped in the meadow, dismounting their horses. Jack took her hand, holding it gently in his own.
Ella, these past months have been incredible. We've faced challenges, learned about each other, and built something rare. I want to continue this journey with you, through the calm, through the storms, through everything. Ella's heart raced, and tears of happiness filled her eyes. Jack, I felt the same way. I was afraid at first, afraid that being myself wouldn't be enough. But it is. You've shown me that love can be patient, kind, and accepting. And I want to be with you too.
He smiled, brushing a stray hair from her face. Then let's promise to face everything together, to support each other, respect each other, and never lose sight of who we are. Deal? As the sun disappeared below the horizon, they stood together, hands entwined, watching the first stars appear in the sky. The world around them was calm, yet full of life. Ella realized that love, trust, and patience could create a bond stronger than fear or judgment. She had found someone who valued her independence, her fire, and her honesty, and that was a rare treasure indeed. Over the following weeks, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Ella and Jack continued their routines on the ranch, helped neighbors, and explored the town together. They laughed often, shared quiet moments, and faced challenges as a team. Ella's confidence grew, not only in her place in Willow Creek, but also in the relationship she shared with Jack. One sunny afternoon, Jack surprised Ella with a small picnic in the fields. He had prepared simple sandwiches, fresh fruit, and a blanket for them to sit on. As they ate, they talked about their dreams, their hopes for the future, and the adventures they still wanted to experience together. "You know," Ella said, smiling, "I never imagined a life like this. Peaceful, yes, but also full of connection, meaning, and love." It's amazing how life works sometimes. The people we meet, the choices we make, and the risks we take all shape our path. And I'm grateful that our paths crossed. Ella reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Me too. You've shown me that it's possible to be loved for exactly who I am, without compromise or pretense." "That's more than I ever hoped for." As summer turned into fall, their relationship deepened. They faced small challenges, as all couples do, but their communication, patience, and trust allowed them to navigate each obstacle successfully. Ella learned to lean on Jack without feeling weak, and Jack learned to respect Ella's independence without fear of distance. Together, they created a partnership that balanced freedom and connection, individuality and unity. One crisp autumn evening, Ella and Jack returned to the meadow where they had first promised to face life together. The leaves were golden, the air cool, and the sky clear. Jack knelt on one knee, holding a simple ring in his hand. "Ella," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "these past months have been the most meaningful of my life. You've shown me courage, honesty, and strength. I want to spend every day by your side, sharing this life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Ella's eyes, and she nodded, speechless at the depth of her emotions. "Yes, Jack, I will." They embraced, holding each other tightly as the sun set behind them. It was a moment of triumph, not over obstacles, but over fear, doubt, and past hurt. Ella had learned to trust, to love, and to believe that being herself was more than enough. Jack had shown her that love could be patient, kind, and unwavering. Together they had built a life where differences were celebrated, challenges were shared, and every day was a choice to love fully and freely. The story of Ella and Jack became a quiet legend in Willow Creek. Neighbors spoke of the woman who had arrived different, independent, and cautious, and the cowboy who had seen her for who she truly was. They spoke of the storms they faced, both literal and metaphorical, and how those storms had made their bond stronger. And they spoke of the love that grew from patience, trust, and respect. Ella knew that life would continue to bring challenges. There would be days of struggle, misunderstandings, and doubt. But she also knew that with Jack by her side, every obstacle could be faced, every fear could be calmed, and every day could be filled with love. She had finally found a place where she belonged, not by changing herself, but by being true to who she was, and trusting that the right person would see her and choose her anyway. As the stars sparkled above Willow Creek, Ella and Jack walked hand in hand through the fields, the soft earth beneath their feet, the wind in their hair, and the future stretching before them like the endless plains. They had discovered the simple truth that love is not about possession, control, or expectation. It is about acceptance, understanding, and the courage to embrace life together, fully and freely. And in that quiet, perfect moment, Ella realized she was home.